Everybody, this is Miss Public Info. Welcome to the CasNCourt show. Glad to see you all. Happy Juneteenth. Feeling a little festive today. I have on my little, Jaquita banana outfit. Little, it's Juneteenth. It's a good day. It's sunny here in Cali. It's a little hot actually. It's pretty blazing. I'm gonna be honest. It's a little warm. It's a little bit warm. It's just toasty, just really toasty actually. But we gotta do what we can. We just have to do what we can. So we have like a little half up, half down hairdo today because we're just trying to make it through the day. So little interesting tidbit I wanted to cover today because I think this is a little bit confusing. It's a little interesting topic I wanted to cover today. DUIs. So this is about former footballer Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman used to play for the Seattle Seahawks. He is also an NFL analyst, I think for ESPN or even Fox Sports. It might be Fox Sports. I might have it confused. But either way, Richard Sherman was arrested in February of 2024 for a DUI. What happened was he was observed on the road going a little swerve here, swerve there by law enforcement. They pulled him over and they wanted to do a breathalyzer on him. Now he refused to do the breathalyzer, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. And so they then had him do a field sobriety test, to which he failed the field sobriety test. So they arrested him, and they then got a signed warrant, and for him to get a blood draw, do a blood draw, and they got the blood draw, and after that he went into the tank and he did his 1 day in the tank and nothing ever happened, and he was let go. So that was February 2024. Yesterday, what is it, June 2025, he was charged with a misdemeanor. And I'm reading for my notes, just so you see my head hanging down here. He was charged with a misdemeanor, DUI, and he was charged 1 day after his blood test results came back from the crime lab, after they were taken the night of his arrest. So you might be wondering, how did he receive a DUI? How was he charged for a DUI 1 year after his arrest? That's a really great question. So I'll answer the first one. Procedurally, first of all, the district attorney has 1 year to charge an individual for a DUI after the police have arrested them. After they have arrested them and collected the evidence, whether it is a breathalyzer test or a blood draw. Now, let me back up a little bit. So when someone is arrested for a DUI, they have a right to refuse a breathalyzer test. But if you do refuse a breathalyzer test, then law enforcement then has a right to have you do a field sobriety test. They may have you do both. Anyway, you may end up doing a breathalyzer test and a field sobriety test, whatever they deem to be necessary. Now, let's just say you do the Richard Sherman route, which we all kind of know Richard Sherman's temperament. Some of us do. He's a very intelligent man, but with that intelligence, he's also a little bit arrogant. So you've got a obviously inebriated Richard Sherman, because his blood alcohol level came back at a 0.11. You're only allowed 0.08, so he was way past the legal limit. So you have a intoxicated Richard Sherman who feels like he knows his rights, and so he's probably saying, I have a right to say no to this breathalyzer test. I'll do your field sobriety test. So he does the field sobriety test. He fails the field sobriety test. So that's either him failing the line, like, stumbling or bumbling words, because sometimes they'll have you like say letters backwards or repeat numbers back and forth, or they'll have you walk in a straight line backwards or forwards or whatnot. So either one of those, he failed that test. So then they arrest him. And what happens on a DUI arrest, I've never been arrested, but I know the procedure. And for those of you who've never been arrested or don't know the procedure, happens on a DUI arrest, you automatically go in the tank. That's what they call it, to dry out. So you would go in the tank, and that's essentially what happened to Richard Sherman. But in the midst of him being in the tank, somewhere in there in the middle of him, after he's fingerprinted, processed, that is, he was also... they also received a signed warrant to get a blood draw for his blood alcohol level, because they needed to know how intoxicated he was, because he refused the breathalyzer. So if you ever say no to a breathalyzer, which is your right to do, please understand that you are going to have to get your blood drawn, and that's just the bottom line. So if you think you're outsmarting the law enforcement by doing that, you're not. So he wasn't. So he ended up getting his blood drawn, and then he went into the tank, and I'm sure he just, bonded out the next day, and or they just let him out the next day, and he went home and didn't think anything of it. So like I said, the DA has a year to charge. Well, like everything else in the judicial system, there is a huge backlog with the crime lab as it relates to these blood alcohol tests. So the crime lab gets backed up. Maybe Mr. Sherman knew that. Who knows? He knew that it would take them a while. Sometimes they expire, maybe. And maybe some people don't get charged. I don't know. I've never experienced that. I've never seen that happen. Who knows? But maybe he thought this was a way for him to sort of, subvert, that responsibility. I'm not accusing him of that, but I'm just saying maybe he, thought that this was a good strategy for him. But it wasn't, because they ended up charging him a year later, which they had time to do, because though they were backlogged, they ended up getting those tests in, and they got them in on apparently the 17th, because by the 18th, which was yesterday, they were able to officially charge Mr. Sherman with a DUI from February 24th, 2024. So that is how that happened. And this actually often happens when, or not often, but this does happen. That there is a backlog. It exists when with these blood, sort of like crime lab blood results, with it when they have to do the blood draw for the blood alcohol level. So he is going to be arraigned, set to be arraigned on June 30th, and he'll have to go through the normal process of, the arraignment, prelim, status conference, all these, legal hoops to go through this. This is actually on a more serious note for Mr. Sherman, because this is his second DUI. He had a DUI back in 2021 where he also was caught driving under the influence. So the more DUIs you accumulate, the more severe the punishment gets each time. So, he probably went through some sort of program or some sort of school that he had to go through the first time. The second time, it could be anywhere from school, fining, or even up to 1 year of a suspended license. So depending on the county, I think this is King County, so this is in Seattle. I'm not familiar with their specific rules and how they handle their DUIs, but I know in some counties they handle it by a suspensions of license. So even if a person doesn't live in that particular county, believe me, if you get your license suspended in one state, all the states know about it. There is a record in the U.S. the national licensure system that tells everybody, the DMV tells everybody in the DMV system that you have a problem with your license. So that will be a problem there. So that's very interesting. And I know that that can be confusing for some people. Like if a lay person reads that article and they're like, well, what do you mean he was arrested in 2024 and he's just being charged for a DUI now? Like, that makes no sense. Like, this is obviously false. They can't do that. Well, it's a total legit thing. It's just a potential backlog in cases. It happens a lot, just like any other, business, but except it's this one, and it's because he had a blood draw. Now, if he have used the breathalyzer, he would have blew the .11 right there, and they would have charged him right there, and he would have gotten a DUI there, and there in February 24, and he would have been charged there, and it would have been handled at that time. But since it was a blood draw and had been sent to the crime lab is very much backlogged with all kinds of DNA specimens that they're working on, anywhere from cold cases to active murders to all sorts of things that they're working on at the time. So a misdemeanor, and they work on them as they come in. So it doesn't matter how serious or how not serious it might be. They're just a busy department. The crime lab is very busy, especially as it relates to DNA and things of that nature. So that's the answer to that. Gotta stay out of trouble, and do not drink and drive. It's just a bad scene. I was reading a story recently about someone who was drinking and driving, and they didn't pass away, but a child did end up being killed, and it's just not a good thing. It just really is not. It is not. So that's the story on Richard Sherman. There's a lot of different stories going on in the press. Please like and subscribe. Please. Thank you so much. And please make a comment. Thank you so much, everyone. Please enjoy your day. Be safe. And please stay out of trouble. Thanks so much. All right. Talk soon. Bye.